I think it was a letter or a report that I heard this morning. I wish I could remember the source, but that there is a school system that's going to start making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching, every year starting, that far down in the grades. And that's a wonderful thing. Kids are sponges. They just absorb everything. And so it wasn't all that long ago that we're going to have internet in our schools. Woo. Now, okay, let's see A1 and how can that be helpful?
Let's get into some learning. Now, did I cut this camera on and grab a fork and knife just to make a mockery of Mrs. McMahon? No. What I did do is take this opportunity to highlight some simple things, and that is Mrs. McMahon and some of her fellow cabinet members have demonstrated two things. You give me a few minutes and I'll show you exactly what it is without stabbing myself. Good day, good people. Thank you for stopping by another edition of the Independent Mail. I'm going to continue to mess with this knife and fork to see if I can go through this entire recording without stabbing myself in the face. If I do, it probably will be good for YouTube, as long as I blur it out. Anywho, we're not going to be long-winded. Erroneous! And I am going to put these things down because I am going to be liable to stab myself in the face. But anyway, am I making a video because Miss McMahon misspoke in an interview? No. Half the time I cut this camera on, I flub words, I mispronounce words, I'll make up words. Things like that happen, especially when you're live. That's not the reason I'm doing this. I am doing this though, because Mrs. McMahon and some of her other cabinet cronies have actually done two things in the short period of time that this administration has been enacted or in control or in power. And they have to do with DEI, as I said in the opening. And what it is two things. Number one, the argument leading up to November and after November, and as some policies and things have been enacted, particularly with the Department of Defense, is that this entire MAGA attack on DEI was good-willed. It was good-willed because the only thing that they were getting after was making sure the most qualified people ended up in positions and not just filling quotas of unqualified people. And the reason why there was this air of unqualified people associated with DEI initiatives or affirmative action initiatives is because in some instances, some institutions or some companies or whatever may have had different standards in order to attract or be able to have a more diverse or whatever environment. I.e., one that I know of is in the military, the PT or the physical training requirements or the test was different for female soldiers than it was male soldiers. That sort of thing right there is what the MAGA crowd would attack, as if every institution that had a DEI initiative or any kind of affirmative action initiative had unqualified people, because they would cite one or two instances where there was a lowering of a standard, and then therefore they were able to make a blanket policy that we only want the most qualified people, not quotas. Well, shortly after the election, that argument got highly dispelled and put on display by accident when Mr. Elon Musk and Vivek, remember him? He's like MIA right now, supposedly running for governor of Ohio. But actually, after he got into the spat with the MAGA crowd over saying the reason that they needed HB1 visas was because for high tech positions, high medical and research positions, we needed to import the talent because the talent pool inside of the United States, and that wasn't his exact words, he basically said we were too slow, wasn't great enough to be able to fulfill those positions with inside the state. What was the MAGA argument to that? Get lost, Vivek. Get lost. We don't care about qualifications. Now that we're supposed to be on the short end of the stick of the qualifications, we don't care about it anymore. It's just supposed to be a higher America. But when it was the argument against DEI, it was all about qualification. Okay. So that got dispelled with the spat with Vivek and Elon, but some kind of way it got glossed over. Well, now it's back on display now with this cabinet, because we have several members that are not qualified for these positions. And we could have said they weren't qualified back in January, but now we have actual proof that these people aren't qualified. So let's circle back to Miss McMahon. I wasn't on her because she misspoke. She said A1 instead of AI. That's just funny, but stuff like that happens. Like I say, I've done it. You may have done it watching this video at work or whatever, whatnot. Here's the thing that is the real issue that shows why Mrs. McMahon isn't qualified. Let's go here. Let's check this out right quick. I'm not going to read all of this article. I just want to read some important parts about it. But let's start with the title here from the Daily Beast. Linda McMahon got body slammed over bogus education degree. Oh, wait a minute. The Secretary of Education got body slammed over a bogus education degree? Well, let's check this out. So I'm going to go into this because I knew that she had a quote unquote background or a former professional stint in the education board. But let's let the article tell it so you guys also know and know in detail. All right. In 2009, the former WWE CEO was confirmed to Connecticut State Board of Education following a contentious hearing in which critics questioned her fitness for the role if she remained involved in professional wrestling's often controversial TV content. All right, nobody cares about this. Here's the juice, though. McMahon's answers to the questionnaire about her background, reportedly reviewed by Governor Jody Rell, were touched in a bid to buttress her credentials. However, several of McMahon's answers were later revealed to be lies. Among her answers was a claim that she received a bachelor's degree in education from East Carolina University in 1969, which turned out to be untrue. Her degree was in France, en français. Où est à la bibliothèque? Où est à la discothèque? Yeah, we gonna know where that's at. Anyway, en français, after the Hartford Courant, all right, contacted her about the claim in 2010, 1 year later, she resigned. The newspaper reported. Okay, Ms. McMahon tried to write off the discrepancy as a mistake, claiming that she conflated her student teaching experience with a degree in education. That, my friends, is what makes Mrs. McMahon unqualified. She found herself on the Connecticut State Board, and when I say found herself, it's the same way she's now on the controlling the federal board. She donated a bunch of her husband's money, and then she ends up on the board. Same thing happens this go around. She donates a bunch of her husband's money to the Trump administration's campaign, and voila, do you like that? En français, and voila, she's a Secretary of Education. Although she had only a 12-month stint, if an entire 12-month stint, at being the state of Connecticut's Secretary of Education, because she lied, because she wasn't qualified, because she knew she wasn't qualified. So she buttressed her resume and then wrote it off as, oh yeah, I thought when I was student teaching, I got a degree in education. That's what I thought. So fast forward to now, and Miss AI is still unqualified, and now she runs the entire country as far as education is concerned. Awesome. So that brings me to number 2. Okay. Not only did this cabinet and has this cabinet demonstrated one thing about DEI, which was that having the best people and the most qualified people was utter BS. This cabinet has also demonstrated at the same time the reasons why those efforts, when I say those efforts, I mean DEI and affirmative action, were in place to begin with, to combat the exact thing you see in this Trump administration. Not only is it not the best people, but these people got these positions based on nothing but loyalty and cronyism to Donald J. Trump. Nothing to do with qualifications. We have a man sitting at the Department of Defense, the head of it, Mr. Pete Hegseth. Unqualified. This guy has been a part-time host / anchor on Fox, a part-time military man with the National Guard, unless I'm missing some active duty activity prior to going into the National Guard. He may. As far as I know, it's just National Guard. So part-time Fox host, part-time military man, part-time husband, if you believed any of the confirmation testimony about his behavior in the workplace. Okay. But the funny thing about this is we almost had an attorney general that was even less qualified. Okay. Both in the courtroom and morally speaking, with the original frat man, grown man as a frat boy, Matt Gaetz, until he pulled himself out of the running. So let's think about that. Matt Gaetz was almost our attorney general. We have Pete Hegseth as the Department of Defense secretary, who's part-time on everything, no extensive military background. Besides, he made it to major in the National Guard, which you can do in your sleep. How do I know? I was in the National Guard, tanker, M1A1 Abrams. So tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay? Pete Hegseth literally is what Vivek was talking about when he got into that spat about not being qualified. He said in the States, because he grew up here, that what do? We praise the jock and the homecoming queen, and we don't care about the math wizard, the debate person. And what did he say? What did he use as an example? Saved by the Bell. He was like, we glorify the Zach Morrises. Guess what? Pete Hegseth is Zach Morris. Pete Hegseth has done nothing to make this military better except for the crowd with the sensitive eyes. The crowd that is quick to tell everyone else that they're snowflakes, that they have victim mentalities if they bring up any issues. This particular individual, for some reason, can't stand to see women and people of color actually contributing to this country. Why am I saying that? That is the only thing Pete Hegseth has done since he's been in office, is erased everyone. Erased everyone that doesn't look like Clint Eastwood or John Wayne. He's erased all of their contributions. And to bolster the fact that the lineage of the Department of Defense secretaries show multiple war heroes with ridiculous decades of active duty and wartime service in the Marines, in active Army, CIA heads, these people's qualifications to be Department of Defense secretary. Let's check them out right quick. And then I want to show you something else that's not there that also bolsters what I was just talking about. Let's check it out. What it was is what it was supposed to be. it brings me back to how I got to this in the first place, as far as one of the few things that Secretary of Defense, Mr. Pete Hegseth, has managed to do, which is erase everyone. The previous dang on Secretary of Defense, you have no information on his bio. None at all. None at all. None at all. Look at that. None at all. Except he served January 22nd of 2021 dash. That's all it says. Nothing else. Nothing else. Everyone else had their extensive military education, career, everything, etc., etc. But for some reason, this hurt someone's eyes. Some snowflake hurts when they see this. I don't know why, because these are the people that tell us how patriotic they are. They put flags all over their cars, flags all over their homes, and they love America. I challenge that. They love the section of America that reflects them. Most of them don't seem to actually love the concept of America. They don't love the melting pot. Because for some reason, when the melting pot does what you ask them to do, which is to assimilate and try to be the best versions of themselves, they get erased. And then on top of that, what has Mr. Pete Hegseth done? Mr. Pete Hegseth has also done some slick stuff that helps these people whose eyes hurt when they have to see women or dark people produce. Again, doing what you think you guys want us to do. Don't want to see it. But what you do want to see is all your old Confederate named forts come back. Yes, that's what he has also done on the low. So your Fort Braggs and all your places that was named after Confederate traitors that lost, so much winning. We supposedly love winning around here so much. But for some reason, we keep praising these traitorous losers. He's found a slick way to rename these forts after him by finding another soldier that shares the same last name. Don't take my word for it. Let's check it out very quickly because I don't want to spend a lot of time on that.
School kids learn about homonyms, words that are spelled and sound the same but have different meanings. For instance, B-O-O-K. You read a book and book a reservation. Now President Trump is seizing on homonyms for political purposes to bring back names his predecessor removed because they were linked to the Confederacy. Jim Axelrod has tonight's Eye on America.
For the second time in less than 2 years, the largest U.S. military base has a new name.
Today we honor a hero worthy of the name Bragg.
The new name is also its old name, Fort Bragg, which for more than a century honored General Braxton Bragg, a Confederate general and slave owner. Donald Trump made a promise that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth kept.
That's right. Bragg is back.
All right, so erasing us, changing forts from former Confederate losers back to the exact same name, but just using a different soldier. Thanks, Pete. I feel safer. I'm sure certain people in the military are celebrating that. Certain people. So kudos there. What else has Mr. Hegseth managed to do? God dang it, I forgot. The other thing he's managed to do that also shows he's not freaking qualified is some kind of way he keeps leaking / texting war secrets, war plans, war strategy over this freaking Signal app. That's old news, my friend. No, it's not. He just did it again. Oops, he did it again. Mr. Qualified, Mr. Zach Morris at Department of Defense, everybody. Let's not take my word for it. Let's check it out.
Pentagon's acting inspector general has announced an investigation into Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's use of the Signal messaging app to discuss military plans in Yemen.
Did the defense secretary and members of the DOD break the House rules regarding things like using apps like Signal in the first place, and whether that information should be retained into official records? So Democratic Senator Jack Reed, who sits on that committee, he was among the first of those who requested the inquiry. He weighed in. releasing a scathing statement saying that the potentially deadly consequences from Secretary Hegseth's blunder, those are his words, they're chilling, and had the intelligence in that chat and those messages been obtained by the Houthis or anybody else, would have allowed them to reposition weapons to target pilots. And that's key to this inquiry. He goes further by saying that the information first reported by CBS News that Israelis provided intelligence used in an airstrike to target what they call a high-value terrorist target. That compromised an Israeli intelligence source, and they're furious about it as far as who provided the location of that target. And it says that would have damaged relationships with America's allies, and Reed called it reckless behavior.
Be long-winded about this, but I just find it very interesting that almost in one foul swoop, so to speak, this cabinet has done two things that they've pretty much been screaming about or screaming against all summer leading into the election and after they won. And number one, they claimed that we had to get rid of DEI because we only want the best people for the job, the most qualified people for the job. Number two, this cabinet keeps highlighting the reason for initiatives like affirmative action and DEI in the first place, because when you start divvying out resources like jobs, like education, people tend to lean towards those that they identify with, those that may happen to be in their family. Nepotism. Those that may happen to have been loyal to their causes. Cronyism. This cabinet is rife with that. And now all of us citizens have to sit back and deal with it for the next 3 years. So that's just my 2 cents. Please jump in the comments and tell me how wrong I am. Until next time, peace and stay informed, because I know it's coming.